Today I'm excited to show you this beautiful credenza, or you can call it a buffet, whatever you want to use it for, but it has a fun secret. It's not just for you, it's for the kids. It is a pull-down table for them, and they can do art projects. You can have it for extra seating for when you're eating or dining. Let me show you how we open it up. And there you have it. Art supplies, as you can see, it's kind of a mess. My kids have been using it and loving it. So, super simple to open, super simple to close. Pretty cool, right? Stick around if you want to see how I made it. Plus, I will share the building plans with you as well and a tutorial on my blog. Let's get started. I designed this to use only one sheet of plywood. I began by ripping and cutting my top and bottom and sides and supports and shelves to size, as well as the tabletop. Then I cut the front face frame, the rails and the stiles, and also the frames that are inset within that with their rails and stiles as well. So I clamped the side front frame pieces to the length of the top, and then I'm dry fitting these to make sure that they're gonna fit, just in case my cuts are off, because I don't want to drill pocket holes and build them and then find out they're not going to fit in the face frame. So this is just something smart to do that I'm glad I did, because I actually ended up cutting off 1/8 of an inch because my plywood was off from the store by a little bit, so I had to adjust a tad. Now I was ready to drill my pocket holes. I did 2.5-inch pocket holes into the 2x2 boards for my frames, and then I did 3/4-inch pocket holes into the face frame and all the rails on those. And then I had my sides and my divider pieces, and those needed pocket holes as well. And then I sanded everything nice and smooth before building. To build, I used wood glue and my Kreg screws to attach everything together with my pocket holes. I love using my clamp track. It's amazing, but obviously if you don't have one, you can use regular clamps. But make sure you clamp your joints when you are building with pocket holes, because it helps ensure that the screw will attach in the proper place without shifting. I learned that the hard way when I first started building. After I drilled in my 2.5-inch screws for my inset frames, I was ready to get started on my divider pieces and my sides. I decided I didn't want my shelves fixed, so I used the Kreg shelf pin jig to drill those holes so that I could move the shelves to different heights. And I'm using that board underneath to set it in the right place so I didn't have to measure, which is always good. Here I am adding my sides to the bottom piece, and I'm using my right angle clamp as a big help. And you can see I am putting my shelves in between to keep the boards nice and square, and that's a great trick and helps ensure that I'm putting them in the right place. Then I flipped it over and attached them to the top, doing the same method using my shelves to help keep them nice and square. And they definitely need it on this. They tried to curve in. So once you get them nice and square and clamped in, they'll be nice and straight. And then of course, after you get that done, you are going to want to check for square, which is what I'm doing right here with a tape measure. Next, I added the 1/4-inch plywood backing and pre-drilled holes and used little screws to attach it. In order to add the hinges and make the frames pull out to become the legs, I had to overcome some obstacles. I started by using some scrap wood to test out my theory, and I figured out that I needed to notch out the wood in the 2x2 frames and not the actual face frame, which you can see I notched out on the top, but I figured it out and it ended up being perfect, where it flips over and sits nice and flush, which is exactly what I wanted. I used a 1x2 to measure from the bottom of the frame for placement of my hinge, and then I set it down near the bottom and measured the spot that needs to be notched out, which is where the hinge needs to go. Once I had that measured on both sides, I clamped it down and used a multi-tool to kind of score the marks where the notches need to be, and then I used my chisel and a hammer to chisel out a space for the hinge. It was actually easier than I expected and didn't take very long, which I was kind of worried about, but it sits nice and flush, which is pretty important for flipping it over to make those legs sit straight and level on the floor. While I had my frames clamped, I decided to go ahead and pre-drill holes for attaching the screws later on. Then I took my tabletop and my front frames and stained them, and then painted also the cabinet. Attaching my screws was quick and easy with the holes already pre-drilled, and then I was ready to add them to the face frame. I used the middle frame to kind of measure everything and get everything where it needed to be, and then I attached those side frames inside. Actually, it was easier than I expected. I always worry about doing hinges, and these went on really well. Next was the spring hinge, and this one was kind of scary for me. I read all the instructions and I was kind of just winging it. I've never done these before, but really with some trial and error I figured it out, and did some testing, pulled it up, and figured, oh shoot, I need to pull it out a little, and then readjusted. So it's kind of a trial and error process, but it isn't very difficult. If you read the instructions on the hinge, they tell you how to do it, so it's quick and easy to adjust. You kind of slide the screws back and forth inside the hinge and then tighten them when you're ready. Next, it was time to add the latch that will actually keep your tabletop and frame up in position when you're not using it. It was really easy to do. Just make sure that you keep the latch a little bit loose. Don't tighten it all the way or you'll have a hard time getting it in. Then I was ready to put on my tabletop. This was also a trial and error since I was kind of figuring out as I went. I measured a part where I needed to notch out for the hinges, and I realized, yes, I need to be notched out, but then I thought my tabletop's too long, and so then I had to, it wasn't closing, so I went and trimmed off 3/4 of an inch on the bottom, and I actually modified that in the plans, so the tabletop is the right length in the plans after I did the adjustments. Then I pre-drilled holes and screwed it on to the face frame. Then I had another realization that I needed to notch out the section for the hinge because it wouldn't close all the way. And so I used my chisel and my hammer and my multi-tool to get that done, just like I notched out the frames for the legs that fold out. I've become good at notching, you guys. It's really not that hard, but it's a little scary, but it's pretty easy. Once that was done, I was ready finally to add the middle frame to the front. I put wood glue on that and used some shims to hold it in place, and then I just used some 2-inch finish nails and nailed it on. And ta-da! Super awesome and done. I actually, because this was for my kids, it's going to go down in their bedroom, I decided to do a fun design. I was feeling like teepees would be fun, and so it's kind of random, but I really love them. So I used my Cricut and cut out some contact paper and vinyl and stenciled those on. I hope you can see that this beautiful yet functional piece of furniture is a great asset in your home, and the kids will love it. Even if they don't have art supplies, Legos are a great thing to store in this, which I've definitely considered. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and this fun project. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. You'll find a link to the tutorial and building plans in the description below. Thanks so much. Happy building!